Good morning, dear family. Rise and shine. My name is Hallimar Rathlorn, and today I'll be reviewing the 6th episode of Snowpiercer Season 3, Born to Bleed. But before I start, to keep this community growing and to stay informed on the latest Snowpiercer content, please take just a second of your time to subscribe. It costs nothing and you won't regret it. And with that out of the way, let's dive right into the video. This episode, like the last one, has very little to cover, so I hope this video is shorter for all of you who like your videos shorter. This episode is essentially only about Layton and Pike's rivalry finally coming to a tragic close. At first I was rather excited to see the Taily tradition come forth and force Layton and Pike to finally confront each other about tensions that have been increasing ever since Season 1. I hoped for an emotional culmination for a multi-seasonal arc, but I was sadly disappointed. A lot of people have been disappointed by this episode, and I can understand why. With Wilfred becoming what appears to be a good man and Rose starting to stabilize, there is very little in the way of genuine conflict in the show at the moment. Having a well-known character such as Pike die so abruptly likely didn't settle well with some viewers, but I believe that Pike's death wasn't exactly for nothing. Although no one will be questioning the great revolutionary Mr. Layton anytime soon when it comes to the characters within the show, I do think this episode is starting to highlight his short-sightedness and general lack of care for what he once wanted to be. Everything from the subtle detail of Layton abandoning the Taily traditions such as a baby naming and the once a Taily always a Taily mantra, to the obvious of caring more about the political repercussions and hating Mr. Wilfred above everything else. Now, finally, after all this time, people are just starting to see how far Layton has fallen. I very much appreciated how the meeting with Pike and Layton was exposed this fact. Each of the two Tailies had a line they didn't want crossed. With Pike it was discussing Ruth, and with Layton it was keeping up the lies. Although I won't make bold proclamations with this fact, I will say that it illustrates a sense of moral superiority with Pike. While this man is portrayed as far more brutal than Layton, the fact that Pike cared about something based on love, whereas Layton cared only about power, speaks volumes, and this fact is only reinforced by how Layton tries to win Pike over. Layton supposedly comes clean with Pike, confessing his own minor secrets while keeping New Eden protected, thinking he can apologize for stealing the engine and leaving everyone from tip to tail to suffer. He thinks that he can confess to Pike that he's used him, as if it will confirm that he will never use him again, that he loves him. And when that doesn't work, he throws material gain at Pike, mentioning a first-class cabin, which I find quite ironic when Layton is supposed to be running a classless train. I won't dwell on it too long, but I think it's safe to say that Layton has become the failed hero, the villain of the show, becoming the very thing he swore to destroy. The two final things to discuss for this episode, other than there being no train scenes, which I found rather disappointing, are the topic of Roche and Wilfred. Roche was resolved rather quickly. Although I do like the happy new beginning for Roche and I look forward to seeing one of my favorite characters back in action again, I do think that it should have been somewhat harder to get him back in motion. Wilfred, on the other hand, has me psyched out. Although he's a long road ahead of him, he is on his way to redemption. Whatever happened to him in Stasis changed him. No longer does he care about power. He genuinely believes that there is a shot in New Eden, and that the science has merit, quote unquote. And I love seeing Wilfred so emotional. One of the first things he does is emotionally hug Audrey, wanting to be with her above everything else, even saying that he'd willingly give up his rolling world because he and Audrey would still have each other. As I said, Wilfred has a long way to go before he can pay for his sins, but seeing him begin to move in the right direction is one of the best moments in the show so far, on par with Layton finding Asha and the introduction to Season 3. But what do you think? I know this season has been controversial so far, especially in the past few episodes, but I would argue that it's still better than Season 2 so far. But I won't make any bold proclamations just yet, as I plan to make a retrospective for this season and every other season a month after this season finale, just to get a final word in after having some time to process the seasons. As in Season 2, I was definitely caught up in a hype train, where I constantly gave good word for Season 2, all the while the season wasn't actually that good. But that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video after a long break from typical programming. This is Mr. Rathlorn wishing you a good day, whenever or wherever you might be.